if you could introduce yourself to our viewers.
Hi, everybody. I'm just a regular man, 47 years old. Half of my life, the first half I've spent in Poland, where I grew up and learned quite a lot. And then the last half of my life, I'm living in Germany, pretty much in the center of the Germany, where I work at the moment in the company building electron microscopes. And before that, I was for something like almost 20 years at the university doing PhD, and after PhD, working on physical stuff, on physics, high temperature, sensor materials, computers, and so on. So
Sounds
pretty
advanced.
much, yeah.
Do you remember when you first got interested in computers?
Yes. It's a very nice story because I was pretty young. I guess I was something about 7 or 8 years old, and I was with my mom on a vacation, and there we have met some other families, and one of the families, the father, he brought his computer. It was Atari 800 with a pretty small TV. It was a TV in this size, more or less, so it was nothing really huge. But he brought this computer with him so that his children can play during vacation if they just got bored with the castle and with the lake and forest and so on. Just small children saying to the dad, "Hey, we want to play the computer because everything else is boring." And this was the first time I saw a computer in my life, and I was able to play with this computer and work a little bit with that. And yeah, this is how it all began.
Okay.
And after that, I was pretty after having computer like that, so I was just telling to my parents, "Hey, I would like to have the computer," and so on. It would be so great, it would be so awesome, and so on. And yeah, at some point this wish realized. But this is how it started.
What other computers that you consider retro did you have in the past yourself?
Define retro at the moment.
Everything past or before the 2000s at least.
Oh yeah, okay. So I've started with Atari, of course, because a few years after I saw the first Atari computer, my parents were able to buy me one, and after that I was switching over to Amiga. And at some point, still having Amiga, I have started to experimenting with some kinds of PCs, but these were pretty extraordinary because I was not having just a computer like everyone else would have. I was having just some industrial main boards on my desktop, which I was trying to connect to work with that. And yeah, so I would still keep naming this old PCs retro because at the moment it is definitely retro. It's,
of course.
It's nothing you would be able to work with at the moment.
But back to Amiga a little bit. What catched your eye with it, and what machine did you have?
I had personally Amiga 1200, which I had for something like 6 or 7 years. And I've started with Amiga, seeing some Amiga 500s in nearby. One of my neighbors, my colleague, had Amiga 500, and he was showing me that computer at some point. I was just thinking, hey, it's awesome. It's so colorful. It's so nice. It has nice music. It has Pro Tracker with lots of modes and so on. It's pretty nice, and I would like to have something like that. And then some classmates from our class, from other classes, started to have Amigas in the nearby. So it was the time when the Amiga was getting popular in Poland. And then we just were traveling from one house to another, from one family to another, just few guys wanting to see computers, wanting to play with computers, wanting to do something with that. And it was just like walking from one house or one flat to another one. Hey, can we please play a little bit? Can we have a look and so on and so on? And it was pretty interesting. It was pretty nice because we were traveling a lot. I mean, it was not a large distance. It was just yeah, a small city where I was living, but we were just wandering, walking from one house to another one, having some fun, having some talks about computers and so on. So it was pretty nice.
Yeah. Did you ever do anything serious on it? Did you code on it or make graphics, anything?
Yes. I think it was all because of my experience with Atari. Because when I got my first computer, when I got my Atari, my parents bought me just a computer without any joystick and so on. So I was not able to jump right into gaming, into playing games and so on. Instead, I had just a computer, I had a display, and I had a keyboard, which you could do something with that. So I've started to play with that. At that time, when you bought Atari, you had some operating instruction with some few simple basic programs at the end, which you could just type in and have a look. And this is how I started to play with writing some kind of software. Definitely not serious software. It was just everything was for fun, but it somehow pushed me not towards playing games. I'm still a very, very awful gamer regarding computers. I usually don't play any games, and if I start to play a game, I just see how terrible I am at playing games. Instead, I try to use my keyboard instead of just playing, pushing four keys to move my my player on the game somewhere. I try to use all of the keys on my keyboard to write the software. So it started from the very beginning with programming, and this was the way I was continuing on Amiga and later on PCs. In my work at the university, because even if I was working in the university doing some physics, I was still using computers to write a lot of software, because almost everything we were running in our lab was the software which I or my colleagues were writing. Because usually today, if you want to do some kind of experiment, you just set up your devices, you start LabVIEW, you drag and drop and draw the lines between the modules just to know, okay, this is my experiment, this is how it's going to look like. But we were doing that a little bit differently, because we just thought, okay, here is an instruction operating manual, here's the set of commands which device accepts, let's connect everything together and have something usable like that. So I think it was just programming all the time with my life with computers.
Did you ever do anything in the demo scene?
No, not really. Not really. I had few episodes where it would be possible to get in touch with the demo scene, but on the other hand, I don't know. I was just a little bit busy with experimenting and with doing stuff for myself only, and not for the community. So usually when I was writing something, I was just keeping that for myself and not giving that away or showing that to the community.
Okay.
Slightly different than AROS, for example.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now. How did you discover AROS, and why did you want to join that project?
It's also a pretty nice story, because at some point, me and my colleagues were writing a game for Amiga. In English, you could name this game Traitor. It was about a guy trying to sell his Amiga because he saw PSX on the commercial, and he decided, oh, my Amiga is crap, I want to sell it and I want to buy PSX instead. He breaks his Amiga, he tries to repair it, and he has to visit his colleagues and buy something, exchange something just to repair it, just to get in time. And once we have sold this game to a Polish company which was releasing this game on the CD. And on the very same CD, you had a folder with open source software, and in this open source software, there was AROS.
Mm.
And this was the first time I saw it. And first, I just thought, okay, yeah, well, maybe interesting, but not really something for me. But at some point, when I was moving away from Amiga towards PCs, um, I felt pretty uncomfortable with the operating systems because I had a Windows as everyone else and I had a DOS. But I was, after so many years with Amiga, I was somehow missing the operating system of Amiga computers. And
Yeah.
at that point, I've decided, okay, I'm still with programming, so let's try to do something usable on the PC. Let's try to write the software. And what software could I start with when I miss Amiga operating system? Let's try to write something like that. And at that point, I've started to learn writing in assembler for Intel processors. And I was looking for some kind of code base which I could use to start developing my own operating system. And this was the second time I just remembered, okay, I had this CD, I had this AROS. Let's have a look at the source code. And it was pretty interesting. And I've started to using AROS to write software in assembler for an Intel PC. And at that point, I was able to write exec library, utility library, and I guess 2 or 3 other ones. And I had also already running multitasking, but I was missing somehow the manpower because I just realized, okay, if I do that by myself, if I do that alone, it will take not only years, it will take tens or
Yeah.
more years to just to have something. And at that time, I have decided, okay, let's write this, guys, because at that time in the past, AROS was in principle working as a software for Linux. It was not standalone. It was not running on PCs and so on. I just contacted the team and I told, okay, hey guys, here I am. I'm writing my own operating system. I called that Mephisto at that time. I don't remember why. And I just told them, hey, maybe we could cooperate somehow. Maybe instead of doing my own stuff, I could just try to make AROS running standalone on PCs instead, because that would be more interesting. And I would have the code base, you would have the code base to run it on PC. And yeah, this is how it all started.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say that was the time in the past when I've joined AROS and started to work on that.
This was back in the 90s, late 90s.
That was late 90s. Yeah, that was something around 1998 or something like that,
Yeah, I would
if I
think so.
remember correctly.
What did you think AROS could become?
I was really hoping that AROS would become an operating system for everyone who was using Amiga before and was missing that Amiga feeling of the operating system. Because since I told you, I was not really that much into demo scene. Um, for me, Amiga was at all times the operating system, and that was what where I felt comfortable with, and
Yeah.
that was something I really enjoyed. And I was really hoping that I'm not the only one who just thinks the operating system make Amiga what Amiga really is. And I was hoping that it will just concentrate people like me who like operating system, which they know, which they like, on the computers they have or they want to have. And yeah, unfortunately, this is still not the case. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, we haven't had so many users in AROS, at least at the time I was working on that, because some years ago I've left that project in
Yeah.
favor of my own ones. And yeah,
Yeah.
I was hoping it could become the official Amiga operating system, but
Yeah.
it didn't.
Exactly. But I was in the project as well for many years behind the
I
scenes,
know.
and I did a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't know about. But I always remember seeing a lot of developers joining the project, being really excited, and then just fading away.
Yes, 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 yes. I had the same feeling because from the very first team, I mean, I still have contact with some of the guys. Um, we just met many years later, many years after that, doing something else, but we still remember each other from the AROS
Yeah.
part of the time, I would say.
Yeah.
But
Um,
it was definitely a very nice and very great experience. I mean, I was enjoying it really a lot
yeah.
because it was for me also something important for myself, just to learn and just to evolve
Yeah.
myself.
There was also a lot of nice people inside it, but
Yeah,
there was a
definitely.
lack of leadership and a way forward. People wanted too many different things, I think.
Yes, I guess that was and still is the problem with AROS. I mean, at the very beginning, we had the strong leader. It was Aaron Digula, who was just leading, who was not
Yeah.
just, who was leading the project.
Yeah.
But I think at some point we have started to miss it. Yeah, I would say we just were in the desperate need of a leader
Yeah.
because just have a look at Linux, for example. You have Linus Torvalds. Okay, some people may not like him because of the way he is, but that's the way he is.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he is definitely a very strong leader who is moving the project forward and who
Exactly.
still has a strong word. And his decisions are very often the ultimate decisions and the last decisions. And if he says something has to
Yeah.
be that way, then it has to be that
Yeah.
way. And I guess that was a little bit the problem with AROS because without leadership, AROS was just moving in very, very many different directions at the same
Yeah.
time. And I mean, we had a very nice slogan. It was no schedule and rocking.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it was nice. It was funny. I
Yeah.
would say if I was in the mood to write something from AROS, what only I wanted to have, then I've started writing that, and I was fine with that. And if someone was not happy with that, well, I
Yeah.
don't care. It's not my problem. But on the
Yeah.
other hand, if you want to move the operating system in some direction, if you want to achieve some goals, you have to have the goals. You have to
Yeah.
define them. You have to have some plan. You have to have some idea what we are going to do and where we are aiming at.
Yeah.
I mean, you just cannot put 20 people on the boat and say, hey, everyone goes in whatever direction you would like to have. I mean, if we are on the same boat, we have to move in the same direction.
Yeah.
We cannot just say, okay, I want this one, I want this one, I don't care, you don't care, and so on.
Exactly. But
So this,
you did have people that liked it that way.
yes, definitely. And I absolutely accept that, but it's also very nice for personal involvement because you see, if you join a project like AROS, you start working on AROS, you start to develop software, but at the same time you develop yourself because, for example, when I was working on AROS, I was working pretty a lot of the on the low level part of AROS, and that was the experience which I was gaining with AROS. It's not something that I've joined AROS and I just had all the knowledge I have at the moment right now. This is not the case. I was learning while working on AROS, and that was my knowledge, that was my gain from the project, and that was something I was doing for myself. And because of that, sometimes people ask me, don't you feel bad that AROS has so few users, that you have mostly developers working on AROS and having fun with AROS? And I was always saying no, because what I do on AROS, I also do for myself. It's my development, it's the knowledge which no one can take away from me. It's something I do also for myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you have such individuals in the team where they say, okay, we don't have the schedule, we don't have the plan, we don't have the common target or list of to-do things which we have to just do one after another. But on the other hand, we have some plans. Each of us has his own plans, where I want to go, what I would like to write, what I would like to learn. Then it's also fine. But even if you have such people on board, you still have to have some kind of leadership. You have to have someone who is saying, okay, you have fun with this part of AROS, you have fun with this part of AROS, but this is the target where we are aiming at. This is the target which we want to achieve, let's say, in 1 year, and not somewhere in the future.
Yeah,
No one knows when and
exactly.
if.
Is there a part of the system that you enjoyed the most working on, or is the most proud of?
Most proud and mostly enjoyable was for me always the low level part of the AROS, because you know this feeling when you have a computer which just starts from absolutely from scratch, from zero. You see the BIOS running and then reading something from the hard drive, and this is the software which you wrote, not the operating system where your software works on, but your software is the operating system, or is the core part of the operating system.
Yeah,
It's it was always the most exciting part to see and to experience, because no, really,
yeah, I believe you.
many times it was like that. I was working at pretty late in the night, I don't know, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and at some point I saw, okay, this is booting, this is working, this driver is now doing something. Oh, I see something on the screen. I was really doing some pretty funny monkey dance on the floor, just to express my feeling. Hey, yeah, this is something I've achieved, this is something
Yeah,
I've done it, I wrote it. And yeah, this that was always a very great feeling, I would
yeah,
say. And this is also the same feeling I have with PiStorm, with MO68, where you see something you wrote, something what is working very, very low level on the basics, on the bare bone of the computer. And this is the software you wrote, and this is the software you control, and this is the software which is doing something that, I don't know, at some points it just feels like magic a little
yeah.
bit.
Was there any ideas you wanted to implement but never had a chance to finish?
On AROS,
Yeah.
yes, there were a few things. For example, I was working together or discussing a lot together with Fabio Alemagna about the new OOP, object-oriented system for AROS, which could overcome some disadvantages of the heat system we have, or AROS has now.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I was yeah, also trying to write more drivers, and with some drivers, I just absolutely definitely failed.
Yeah.
So I still know, and I still have bad feeling about that, because I've made some people upset. Some people were trusting in my skills. Let's write a graphic driver for Radeon graphic card or something like that. And there were some parts where I just definitely failed. And something I have managed to write, and something I wish it evolved more, was the USB system for AROS, because I don't know if you remember, because before AROS become Poseidon USB stack,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was writing my own one, and that was also a very basic work from scratch, where I was first reading tons of documentation, then thinking about how to implement it, and it was, yeah, it was pretty nice system,
Yeah.
object oriented. Also, at some point when working for one company, I have translated it, rewritten it from scratch to C++, and it was still working, also on very basic, on very low level. And I wished it evolved a little bit more. I wished I had more time to write more classes for that, because then it would be a maybe also nice alternative to Poseidon. I mean, Chris did really absolutely great job on the Poseidon,
Yeah.
and what he delivered is absolutely huge and great portion of the software. But I would just like to have enough time to experiment with my own one before we have switched to Poseidon.
Okay. Looking back now, what would you do differently if you were starting AROS from scratch today?
Basically, what we've been discussing already, I
Yeah.
would push definitely a much more pressure on the. I I wouldn't never want to be a leader of AROS, because this is not something I feel good with. Um, but I would definitely put much more pressure just to find or just to define a leader and to have a roadmap which AROS could follow, because I have the feeling AROS had a chance, because AROS was before MorphOS, AROS was before OS4, and if we had goals, if we had stronger leadership at that time, maybe AROS had a chance to become official Amiga OS at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe not. On the other hand, having leadership and having well-defined goals maybe would allow AROS to evolve more properly, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, that might upset some people, but on the other hand, I would also try to avoid splitting the AROS community in the way it was and it is splitting, because, for example, we had made a, I wouldn't say a mistake, but we could have learned from that a little bit better. When AROS started, we had the application binary interface version 0, and this was the one we had on the PCs, on the 30-bit Intel CPUs. At some point when we started transition or adapting to Motorola processors, we have started to work on application binary interface version 1, and it was never defined as absolutely completed. It was always somehow work in the progress. And because of that, we had the chicken and egg problem, because people were waiting for the binary interface to stabilize before porting the software to that. And it was not stabilizing because we had no software which could be running on it and which could just set the binary interface in stone. And right now we have ABI version 0, we have ABI version 1, we have now ABI version 1.1. I think this is a little bit unnecessary scattering of the community, because AROS community is pretty small, and
Yeah.
I think splitting a small community into even smaller parts, it's not something that helps AROS. So
Exactly.
this is something I would definitely, if I could start, or if AROS could start from scratch, if we could move back in time, I would definitely put more pressure just to make sure, okay, we evolve, we change, we adapt, but let's keep together. Let's not split the small community into even smaller splitted communities. That would be definitely something worth trying.
Yeah. Do you think AROS can realistically reach a point where people choose it as a primary OS anymore?
Um, that might be hard at the moment. I mean, not for everyone, because you have, for example, Apollo OS for vampire computers, which is
Yeah.
basically AROS enhanced and more adapted to Motorola CPUs again, or to Apollo CPU. And this one has very huge chances to gain acceptance from the community, because everyone who is getting Vampire is also getting this Apollo OS pre-installed or on the CF card, whatever. On the other hand, if you look at the PCs, And that's something that was always problem with AROS, because people were expecting, okay, if I have AROS for Intel CPUs and I have some Intel-based computer at home, then it will definitely work. It must work because this is PC, AROS is for PC, this is fine. And that was not always the case, because behind huge operating systems like Windows or Linux, you have thousands of developers who are writing drivers, or even companies are writing drivers for the hardware. In case of AROS, you don't have that. You have, let's say, 5 or 10 developers working on the
Yeah,
drivers. And very often it was the case that even if you have AROS which works on Intel PC, it doesn't work on the PC which you have at home.
exactly.
And right now at the moment, I wouldn't say that amount of hardware appearing on the market for PCs is decreasing. It's the opposite. So with every day you have some new hardware concepts. I mean, there are many standardized things like NVMe, USB or whatever, but the problem is always in details, because even if you have some well-defined hardware, you have some vendor adaptations, inventions, bugs, or whatever, which you have to take into account. And very often a driver, which is a generic driver for some kind of hardware, is not working with the hardware the user is having. So I guess that might pose a huge problem for AROS to gain much more users at the moment. I mean, you could always say, okay, this is the main board, this is the PC, which AROS supports at 100%. But on the other hand, uh, at the day you release AROS for that, this main board is already obsolete and you have to buy a new one, which has new devices, which requires new hardware drivers. And once you write these drivers, you have another board because this one is obsolete again.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of problem. And running AROS in virtual machines like VMware or VirtualBox is a nice idea, but it will never make you a definite user of AROS as the only operating system, because you have the VirtualBox, you have VMware, which is running on Linux, on Windows, or on macOS, whatever.
Yeah.
And this gives you the opportunity, okay, if AROS is not having the feature I want at the moment, I just switch back to PC, switch back to Windows, Linux, whatever, and I use that one. And if you have this, what's the reason to use AROS for all the time if you have this alternative at all
Exactly.
time, just with a mouse click away from you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we will see in the future.
Yeah, sorry for being so pessimistic.
No, no, it's better to be honest than lie. So,
Yeah.
okay, over to your new project, M68.
Yeah.
How did this happen? What were you trying to solve and why?
It was because of AROS. At that time, I was still working on AROS, and I was working on AROS board for Raspberry Pi. And the Raspberry Pi, the processor in the Raspberry Pi has a very nice feature. It doesn't work only in little endian mode. It also can be run in big endian mode. And then I was trying to port AROS to big endian ARM CPU. And having that, the next pretty obvious question is, okay, if your ARM processor is running in big endian mode, how about the Motorola software? Would you be able to emulate it? Would you be able to run it together with AROS? And for that, you of course need an emulator. And I was looking for one. The problem was not finding an emulator, because you have QEMU, you have many other options. The problem is the license, because as you know, AROS is open source, but you have many different open source licenses and they are not always compatible with each other.
Exactly.
So AROS is APL, which is MPL, Mozilla Public License version 1, derivated. So it's not exactly the MPL license, it's a derivative of that. And this license is not really compatible with GPL. And most of the emulators I was able to find were GPL based. So they were,
Of course.
per definition, incompatible with AROS. And at that point, I just was desperately needing an emulator which would be able to execute Motorola code. And as I told you, when working on AROS, I was doing quite a lot for myself, for my own evolution or development of my skills. And at that point, I just asked myself, so, hey, you never wrote a full CPU emulator. You don't know if you can. So let's find out if you can. And this is how I started. First, I was thinking about writing an interpreter, just like Musashi, for example, which is an interpreter for the Motorola. But at some point, I just thought, okay, maybe something like just-in-time compilation, because you never did that before. Wouldn't it be nice to find out if you can? And so I've started to write it. And the plan at the very beginning was to make it part of AROS. So I've started with MPL license. I didn't want to use APL, so AROS license. I've decided to use Mozilla Public License version 2, which is a little bit more compatible with GPL and with other open source licenses. It's not so close. Close is bad word. It's not so incompatible like the MPL version 1, or because of that APL. And yeah, so it started like that. I was having some progress with that, and at some point it grew up to the point where I was able to run some Motorola code on that. And yeah, together with that project, I was slowly losing the motivation for AROS. And so I would say MO68 is born because of AROS. And my contributions to AROS died because of MO68. So I was just slowly moving from one project to another one, and at some point I was just thinking, okay, what's the point, right? And sometime in the past, some colleagues of mine asked me, hey, if you have this emulator, if it's running on Raspberry Pi already, maybe you could try to put this Raspberry Pi somehow into Amiga just to make it CPU. I first thought, okay, these ideas are pretty crazy, and I can't imagine it could work somehow. And at some point, MO68 was mature enough. And I just saw on the Twitter, hey, there's some guy in Germany, some Claude Schwartz, who just put his Raspberry into Amiga and is controlling Amiga from that, and it's somehow working. And this is how MO68 met PiStorm. Because when PiStorm was born, it was using Musashi. So it was the Raspberry was starting Linux, or Linux was starting the emulator. And the emulator was taking over the control in Amiga and was pretending to be the CPU of the Amiga. And when I met the guys for the first time, I just said, hey, I have MO68, which is working without Linux. Maybe we could somehow let it talk through PiStorm to Amiga and see if it's working somehow. Because for me, it was, of course, a very nice test field, because having emulator written MO68 without any software which I could test, because I had no Amiga hardware, so I was just able to write very short routines to test, to have a look. Hey, it's working not. But you cannot test everything by yourself, and you put this into Amiga, and suddenly you have hundreds of thousands of pieces of the software which you just may let run and see what happens with that.
You said MS68 is not really emulating a specific 68 CPU. How do you explain it in one sentence to someone who thinks it's just a 68 or 40 on a Pi?
One sentence.
Or two.
No. One word. Java. Think about MO68 like Java runtime, which is executing Java bytecode, translating it to the target CPU, which the runtime is running on, and executing. In case of MO68, we don't have Java bytecode. We have M68K bytecode, which is not really executed directly. It's interpreted on the target CPU. It's translated to set of the instructions, which are then executed as translated blocks of code.
Yeah.
So I consider M68 just to be a M68K virtual machine, which is running the code. And by the way, M68 for PiStorm is written. Every access to the chipset is performed automatically through the PiStorm to Amiga, so that for MO68, the memory space of Raspberry Pi, because MO68 sees all the memory of Raspberry Pi, including all the peripherals and so on. So for MO68, you have just a Raspberry Pi with a chipset of Amiga at the lowest 16 megabyte of memory address space. So it's just translating the Motorola code, like Java is translating the Java bytecode into something the CPU can execute and then executing it.
Okay.
And why 040? The reason is very simple. All the processors until Motorola 68040 have some, let's say, undefined behavior, which you have to precisely emulate if you expect the software to run the way it runs. I mean, for example, if you look at the manuals, you have information that this instruction is modifying the condition codes, flags, this, and this one is ignored or undefined. And this undefined means actually that for 00 or 20 or 30 and so on, no, not that so on, at 040 it's the end,
Yeah.
that the CPUs were changing the undefined flags in different ways. And you would have to simulate that. On the other hand, lower Motorola CPUs don't have nice instructions for management of the cache. And MO68 is using a huge block of the memory as a cache, 64 megabytes, for example. And you need instructions for cache management, for flashing, and so on. And 040 was the first CPU which was having a nice instructions for that. So this is why MO68 is identifying itself as 040, but in reality it's not, because MO68 implements in principle all the instruction set from the Motorola CPUs, starting from 00 through the additions of 020 up to 040, 060. And at the same time, it's not removing the instructions which, for example, 060 removed, like the 46-bit multiplication, which MO68 just supports without any problem.
Where is the biggest remaining performance bottleneck today? Yes.
Actually, two of them. One is the Raspberry itself, because Raspberry Pi, even the version 4 or CM4 board, are still pretty old ARM architecture. It's a Cortex A72, where you can find, for example, boards which are Cortex A76, or even more recent ones, which are definitely faster than CM4, than Raspberry 4. And the second bottleneck of MO68 or of PiStorm is the Amiga itself.
Yeah.
Because you have to think about that many components of Raspberry Pi or many parts of MO68 of the PiStorm are working faster than, for example, the memory of Amiga or the bus of the Amiga. So sometimes you have the situation where MO68 can perform pretty quickly, but on the other hand, you try to read something from the chip memory, and suddenly the performance is dropping drastically to something like 2 or 3 megabytes per second, and you just wonder, okay, hey, my SD card is much faster than that.
Yeah.
so sometimes it's really somehow problematic or funny just to see, hey, my SD card is faster than Zorro 2 in Amiga, or or things like that. And on the other hand, the problem not with MO68, but the way we talk through the PiStorm to Amiga is reading from the memory, because with writing to chip memory, we can just start a transaction and do something else in that time until it's done. While when reading from the Amiga bus, we have to send the read command on the bus, we have to follow the Motorola CPU protocol, and we have to wait for the result. We have to get the value back, which is on the bus. And the problem is the transmission of the Raspberry Pi itself, because writing to the GPIO ports, which we are using for PiStorm, is pretty fast. I mean, it's something like few nanoseconds in the case of P4 or CM4. But reading from the GPIO is taking something like 100 nanoseconds. And you have to remember the single full bus cycle of Amiga is 560 nanoseconds or 550. And if you miss the opportunity to read on time from the bus, then you are wasting a cycle, and then suddenly the performance of reading from the memory by the PiStorm is dropping by a factor of 1.5 or something like that. So with the PiStorm in Amiga, we have memory write speeds as fast as possible. I mean, we reach the speeds which Amiga can reach, which chipset can provide, but reading is still a bottleneck, and we are thinking about some ways to overcome it. But on the other hand, it's pretty hard.
Which feature is users constantly asking for that is much harder than they think?
Yeah, AGA on Amiga 500, for example.
Yeah.
The problem is when people see the PiStorm, and when people see the speed of the PiStorm, they usually compare it, for example, with Vampire. And on Vampire, you have two modes of operation. One is just like a regular acceleration card for the Amiga, and on the other hand, you can, if you want, you can emulate the chipset or parts of the chipset on the Vampire. And that way you can say, for example, I put the Vampire into my Amiga 600, and suddenly I have AGA, I have the high resolution modes, I have the 16-bit Paula, and so on and so forth. And people are often asking, hey, if PiStorm is just like a Vampire or Vampire but faster, how about AGA? How about all the features which you could have but you don't have? And and this is what we always say. You have to consider PiStorm and MO68 as an acceleration card for Amiga with additional hardware, which is just like you had the Blizzard acceleration cards, where you could put a SCSI card, graphic card, and so on, and you could just use the Amiga drivers to talk with that hardware. And this is exactly what we are doing. We have the PiStorm, we have the Raspberry hardware, and we provide the drivers to talk to that hardware directly. But on the other hand, if someone is saying, hey, but AGA, but the chipset and so on, then we just simply say, no, this is not the way it is. This is not the philosophy of the PiStorm, and this is not something which is going to change in the future.
What's the biggest misconceptions people have about PiStorm?
I think the biggest misconception is that all the PiStorm is emulation, which is not the case. So in case of PiStorm, you have MO68, which is doing CPU, but everything else, I mean the graphic driver for P69, or the drivers for micro SD card, or at the moment NVMe or USB and so on, all of these drivers are not emulated. So this is not the hardware which is emulated. This is the hardware which the drivers are directly talking to. And sometimes people say, hey, if you have, for example, a Wi-Fi driver on Linux, why don't you use that with PiStorm? Why don't you use that with MO68? Because we can't. I mean, this is the same as asking us, yeah, you have the USB driver for Linux. Why is Amiga not seeing this USB? Because the Amiga and MO68 is just seeing the bare hardware, which is connected to the bus in the Raspberry. And from the Amiga side or from the MO68 side, you just see the bunch of registers which you can write to, talk to, but this is not something virtual. This is the real Raspberry hardware, which you can write drivers for. Yeah, so if someone is looking, for example, for on the drivers, disassembling the drivers for PiStorm, then you will just see this is the pure MO68 code. There is nothing ARM, there is nothing Linux-like, there is nothing Intel-like, there is no other CPU, it's pure Motorola. And I guess this is something that is puzzling people quite often because yeah, they can just say, okay, Wi-Fi, you have the network stack on the Linux somehow, use it. We can't. The same way people are saying sometimes, yeah, maybe MO68 could write some log file on the micro SD card. It cannot, because MO68 is not aware of the micro SD. This is the Amiga OS which is talking to the micro SD, not MO68 directly. And I think this is the biggest misconception, that everything is emulation. It is not.
Oh, okay. Do you think we will see PiStorm for the A3000 and 4000?
Yeah. Maybe at some point in the future. The problem is not the lack of motivation, because the motivation is there.
It's
There
lack
are,
of power, probably.
there is a little bit lack of the manpower to do that, but this is not the only problem. I mean, when working with MO68, when working with PiStorm, I can show you. Yeah, here. So this is one of the earlier versions of the PiStorm for Amiga 600. You see some wires here, because I've made some mistakes and they had to be corrected. And now imagine if I made a mistake which destroys my Amiga 600. It's a loss, but on the other hand, you are losing something like, I don't know, 200, maybe 300 euros if the whole mainboard is damaged because of the PiStorm. Now try to do the same experiment with, let's say, Amiga 4000. These are not so common like 500, 600 or 1200. They are pretty rare, and they are also still very expensive.
They are very expensive.
Yeah, and now imagine that, for example, PiStorm people say, hey, we found someone who is willing to start making PiStorm for Amiga 4000. Now we are looking for donors who will lend us or make a gift of, let's say, 3 or 4 Amiga 4000, which we will probably destroy because of some mistake, which can happen, right? So you still can be very careful. You can put quite a lot of attention. Just make sure everything is working fine. But if something happens, if, for example, you lend me Amiga 4000, which you love, which you like, which you have spent a lot of money on it, and if I make a mistake and destroy it, how do you feel about that? How do I feel about that?
It
It's not so
depends.
it's not so easy.
No.
And I mean, for us, for the people behind PiStorm, working on it, it's not really a problem, because we are doing everything as open source, open hardware. We are doing that for our fun and for the community, because we have a pretty strong PiStorm community, and the community is pretty active. And this is also absolutely great feeling to have such community behind us. And yeah, we are doing that in principle for them and for us. Um, but at some point, you have to find companies which are building that, right, and selling that. And then, even if we release everything as open source so that you can build it by yourself, not everyone is capable of, not everyone is willing to do that, and people are looking for the companies which will do that for them. And then such companies, they will definitely look at the cost factor and the demand of the market. And if they say, okay, I could, for example, sell 500 units of PiStorm for Amiga 500 and 500 PiStorm 32 units for Amiga 1200 and 5 units for Amiga 4000, they will say, no, forget it. We are not going into that because for us it will be not really a profit. So for PiStorm people, it's not really a problem. The problem is the risk of damage, a little bit lack of the manpower because not everyone is able to do the hardware, not everyone is able to design the hardware, and but the companies which are then selling the PiStorms, for example, to the people, they will also look at how many units they can build, how many units they can sell. And this is a little bit of problem. I mean, I myself would love to work on something like that, but on the other hand, yeah, it's pretty risky. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
I
get it.
I
I get it.
I don't have the Amiga to destroy, and I don't think anyone would just say, "Hi, take my Amiga, have fun with that, and if it burns, well, make a nice photo of the smoke,
Yeah, I have. I
the
have.
magic smoke."
I have quite a few of those machines myself, but I do not want to see them burn.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. That's the point.
So
And with the PiStorm for Amiga 600, for example, uh, I had made a mistake, much worse than these few wires which I just showed you. And at that point, I was just I've made a short circuit to the ground of many of the pins which were coming from the chipset. And I had luck that it's still working, but it could just be the other way around, and it just could be that my Amiga 600 is just a piece of dead hardware.
yeah, I guess we will see in the future. Perhaps there will be a Kickstarter. Perhaps someone will create some new motherboards to test on. You never know.
I mean,
Um,
everything is free, and we are happy to see someone working on that. But
yeah,
you know, yeah, everything with PiStorm, with MO68 is open source. This
yeah,
is we support everyone, but on the other hand, if demand is there, if someone is working and wanting to have that, and if someone really wants and is able to make something like that, or find someone who is ready to do that for him,
yeah, exactly.
you're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of people are excited to see a frame a throw for the A1200, and people like me that perhaps do not read every forum out there. If you know, is there anything you can share about its current status?
I would need to talk with Claude Schwartz about that because he's the guy behind the frame thrower.
Yeah,
Um, I know he's pretty busy at the moment with the live with private stuff.
yeah,
So he's not able to spend as much time as he would like to. Um, on the other hand, I know also that there is a big pressure on him because he released some preview videos or photos of flamethrower working on A1200 long time ago already.
yeah,
But this needs a small explanation because at that time he was working with Govin boards. You maybe know this Tank Nano
yeah,
9K, for example. This is the FPGA board, which
yeah,
is pretty cheap one. You can buy it on AliExpress for something like few euros. I don't know, €9, €10, something like it. It was not really expensive. And that was the board he was working with on the first version for the, of the frame thrower for 1200, and this was working to some degree, but the problem is the boards themselves, because the manufacturer of these boards, of these tank nanoboards, made some design mistakes, and the FPGA, which is on these boards, has also its own issues. And because of that, the frame thrower for 1200 was already pretty advanced. I mean, Claude was naming it. I think he said it was something like alpha stage, but for me it was way beyond alpha stage. On the other hand, the instability issues because of the FPGA, instability issues because of the boards with the FPGA on them caused so much trouble that Claude just decided to change the perspective, to get rid of this FPGA, to try a different route, and this is how he started to work on this RP 2350, this small CPUs from Raspberry directly. And this is how he decided to have a look at the frame thrower for Amiga 500 first, because this one was a new starting point for him to experiment in a new way how to do that. And yeah, so unfortunately you can find some pictures or some videos on YouTube in the internet with the frame thrower 1200, but this is not the frame thrower which we have right now. And I guess it still needs a little bit of time.
Yeah,
And I mean, for everyone who is not showing the patience, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, if people definitely want frame for Amiga 1200, they just say, hey, give me that, where is it, On the other hand, please show some respect to Claude, because he's doing that in his free time, and he's not directly selling the frame thrower. When he's ready, he's releasing everything as open source. This is how it was, for example, with the frame for Amiga 500. There was some misconception of some people who said, hey, Claude make frame for Amiga 500 and for Amiga 600. Why not 1200? This is not the case. The frame for Amiga 600 was done by another person based on the project which Claude made, the frame for Amiga 500. So this is not Claude alone who was working on the 600 version. Give him some time, and even if it's hard to do, show some patience. This is unfortunately all I can say about the frame thrower for 1200.
I didn't expect some magic. I just wanted to see what was the status. But something completely different. PPC support.
Yeah. This one is already, I can say this is already working, but what is missing is the ROM for Amiga OS. So the PowerPC itself is there. And I've made it, even though at the very beginning I said, no, I'm not going to add any PowerPC emulation or translation or whatever. Because I've said, okay, MO68 has 68 in the name. It is the 68, it is the Motorola CPU. But people were asking me so many times, hey, how about running the ARM code for the ARM processor directly from Amiga OS and so on, like Amiclone is allowing you to use the Intel code on Amiga OS and so on. And my answer was always, I do not want to fragment the community. I do not want to fragment the binary interface of Amiga OS, and adding ARM to classic Amiga OS would be adding something new, some new processor architecture, and this is what I do not want to do. This is something I definitely want to avoid. On the other hand, the processor on the Raspberry Pi has 4 CPU cores, and MO68 is using 1. Then there is a housekeeping, which is using the second core, and the third core is also sometimes used for logging for the running log in the background and putting the data on the serial port. And I still have the fourth CPU core, which was not used at all. So it was just wasting resources and waiting for something. And yeah, at some point I've just decided, okay, let's have a look at the PowerPC again, because when I was working on AROS, I was already learning about the PowerPC, because I was also writing AROS port for the Effica PPC and so on.
Oh, yeah, that was
And
balls.
yeah, and for the Samantha 440 also. So I had already some experience with the PowerPC, and what I've remembered from that time was that PowerPC is the architecture at some points quite similar to ARM, because they are both RISC and they have a pretty similar instruction set, at least to some degree. And I've decided, okay, if I have one free CPU core, instead of letting people run the ARM code directly, I can try to allow them running the PowerPC code instead. And based on the experience I had with MO68, I have written completely new translator for the PowerPC, which is translating PowerPC to ARM. Then the second loop, which is running the translated code. So it's basically the second copy of MO68, just translating the PowerPC to ARM.
Cool.
And it's also, this is the nice feature, it's also running on the separate core of the piece of the ARM processor, which means it does not have any negative impact on the MO68 itself, on the Motorola M68K code.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it is able to run really absolutely in parallel. I mean, with the well-known limitations, the two CPUs cannot write to the same memory location at the
Yeah.
same time and so on. But on the other hand, this is something we never had on the classic Amiga with Blizzard PPC, for example. There you never had the well-defined memory coherency. And maybe you remember this context switching in the Warp OS or whatever, which was always wasting a lot of time. And this is something we don't have on MO68, because all the ARM processor cores are memory coherent,
Yeah.
and all the memory they see exactly the same way. And they have the hardware means to control the coherency at all times. So
Yeah.
it means all these context switching issues and so on are not existing in this case. So it is already working. At some points, the PowerPC translated to ARM is something like faster than Motorola code translated to ARM by factor of 2. So it might be two times faster in some code. On the other hand, the only thing which is basically missing at the moment is the PowerPC library, which allows you on the Amiga OS to run the PowerPC tasks, to run the PowerPC software, or to load the PowerPC software from the hard drive. So this is the part which I'm going to work again once MO68 1.1 is ready, because this is the biggest bottleneck at the moment. End of last year, during Amiga 40 meeting in Mönchengladbach, I promised that MO68.1.1 is almost ready, and it will be released a few days later, or at least a few weeks later. And then the problem came out. I have found some pretty serious bugs which were sitting in MO68 since the very beginning, and they appeared, or they expressed themselves first with the MO68.1.1. So this is something I'm fixing at all times, and also trying to improve the code even more. But once this one is at least in the beta stage, I'm going back to work on the PowerPC library, so that people can have some fun with the PowerPC code.
Sounds interesting and something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much does community feedback actually shape the roadmap?
It shapes the roadmap quite a lot, because this is something I was missing in case of AROS. Absolutely. is the feedback from the
Yeah.
people, because when I was working on AROS, we had, for example, bounty system, and sometimes you just took some bounty, you made the bounty, and then you were waiting for weeks for some people to find time to test it and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
And in case of PiStorm, in case of Emo68, I just throw the new binary on the Discord server, and definitely a few minutes later I have a huge feedback. This is working, this is not working, this could be better, this is worse. So I would say the community is shaping the development of PiStorm and of Emo68 really to very large degree.
Yeah.
Because based on the feedback, we are improving stuff at all times. And without this feedback, we would just, or at least I would just feel somehow, I don't know, on the lonely island by myself, only looking for the issues or trying to solve the trouble. And on the other hand, what we have recently is also support from other people, because for a very long time, a few of the guys, Claude, Ras, and a few others were working on the hardware. I was working on Emo68, and that was it. And first, the contributions to Emo68 started from the people on our Discord server, which was already pretty huge gain and pretty huge improvement, because I'm not able to do everything alone on Emo68, and having support from other people was just absolutely, definitely the best thing that could ever happen.
Yeah.
And now we have also some third-party contributions from people which are not always present on the Discord server.
That's good.
For example, you have now, maybe you've heard about Emo68, or PiStorm has now USB support for the Poseidon stack. And that was something written by Rondoval, guy from Poland, who is using PiStorm, who is using Emo68. And he just started contributing massively to AROS. So he was working on the USB stack, he was working on the Genet device, which is the gigabit Ethernet for driver for M68 for PiStorm. Claude started to work on NVMe. We have also from Rondoval support for the power for the PCI Express library, so that we can use the PCI Express bus of the P4 or CM4. So I think the community is shaping really a lot, and this is the kind of support, this is the kind of contribution I appreciate really quite a lot. I mean, this is something I love about this community. People are not ashamed to say that I screw something up, or something could be better, something is worse, something is nice. The feedback is really gorgeous, and this is something I love, and this is something that shaped the PiStorm and Emo68 quite a lot, I would say.
Good. Unless there's anything else you would like to add about M68 or PiStorm, I think we finished with that part.
I guess we have covered that quite a lot. I mean, yeah, I don't know. The project is full of life.
Yeah.
The project is shaping very nicely, and the community is great. I mean, I'm really loving it.
Great. Yeah.
So I would say for me, this is basically the best Amiga time of my life with the PiStorm and with the Emo68. I mean, I was not enjoying Amiga that way at the time where I had the Amiga before switching over to PCs.
Okay, we're over to the ending questions. If you had unlimited engineering resource for 1 year, what would you build?
Everything. No, don't ask about one thing I would build. I mean, there is Emo68, which has to evolve. There is PowerPC, which has to evolve. There are some other projects. I mean, at some
If you could build anything.
Anything.
Yeah, anything. A robot, anything.
You know what I would do? Um, because I mean, robots and so on, this is all
Yeah,
fine. This is
yeah,
all great. But on the other hand, when I was working on AROS, I had one nice dream, and I think you were talking about that with Johan some time ago.
yeah,
ARIX.
yeah,
Yeah. So basically, as I told you in the very beginning, for me, Amiga was the operating system, and that was something I enjoyed
yeah.
a lot. And nowadays, it's not really possible for a small community to have support for all the hardware and so on. On the other hand, you have the Linux kernel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would put quite a lot of effort on doing something completely wild. I mean, writing a set of libraries, set of processes, and so on, running directly on top of Linux without all these GNU libraries and so on, just talking directly to the kernel through the system calls, providing my own API to create a new operating system which would be somehow similar to Amiga OS. Not exactly the same, but similar.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, if I had enough time, I think that would be something I would try to jump into, because I think this is something I have not yet explored. I mean, I've done a lot with low-level software, with the hardware and so on. But on the other hand, making a whole operating system like that would be something I would like to try. I mean, there are also millions of things not IT related or not computers related I would love to do if I had unlimited
Yeah,
engineering capabilities for 1 year. But I don't know. I think if I had such possibility, I would just put a list of 1,000 things, and then I would just sit for half a year thinking which of these is the best one to do just right now.
yeah,
So I think just having a one goal or two would be more than enough for me. But
yeah,
trying to find a goal would be the hardest thing.
yeah. Okay. What will surprise the Amiga community most over the next 5 years?
Wow, hard question.
Yeah.
What will surprise? I don't know, but I think what would be the biggest surprise and what I would really like to welcome in the Amiga community would be some kind of unification. I mean, uh, we had different opinions. We had a different split in case of AROS itself, but we have also that in the bigger scale in case of Amiga community. We have all these misunderstandings and so on, all this trouble, all these issues, all these discussions where I don't like this guy and this guy doesn't like the other and so on. Um, what would surprise Amiga community and what I would really love to have would be going back somehow to the roots, some kind of unification. I mean, for me, of course, at the moment, because of the PiStorm and MO68, the best would be the unification under the name of MO68 or Motorola 68 code or PowerPC code on the classic Amiga. And I would really love seeing that evolving. But I guess what would really surprise the people would be stop of all these Amiga wars, because we definitely don't need them, and it's not really worth that, because we all somehow worship Amiga or what is left from the Amiga, and that it would be really great just to
Yeah.
unite again. You
Yeah.
can see sometimes on the Amiga walls there is a post which is going back, I guess, every year. It's time to join the forces. I would
Yeah.
say it's not the time to join the forces. It's the time just to stop these wars, because this is something we don't definitely need. I mean, uh, if you look at the world, if you look at the IT which we have at the moment, uh, the all the people can just say, "Hey, let's leave these Amiga guys alone. They will just finish themselves with their internal wars." So I guess that would surprise Amiga community a lot, and that would be something I would really welcome.
Yeah. Do you think the internet has changed creativity for the better or worse?
Definitely for the better. I
Mm,
mean, of course, it depends on the way you are looking at. I mean, if you would like to be manually creative, build something and design something, and then you find out on the internet, someone has already done that, so I don't have to be creative enough or anymore. I can just buy it and have it. From this point of view, it's worse. But on the other hand, the internet gives you a huge resource of the information. So this is something which I was missing many years ago. And at that time in the past, if you wanted some information about the hardware, about the programming languages, whatever, either you found something in the library, either you were able to buy a book, or you were just left alone without any information. And now, thanks to the internet, you have the community, you have a lot of people you can ask, you have a lot of people you can talk with and exchange the information or exchange the ideas. So just look at the PiStorm and MO68 alone. I mean, when I was working on M68, someone threw the idea, hey, connect this processor to the Amiga, let's see what happens. The other guys came to the same idea, and thanks to the internet, thanks to the connection and ability to meet somehow virtually in the internet, projects like PiStorm and MO68 are alive. So definitely from this point of perspective, almost unlimited source of the knowledge and information, I think internet has changed the creativity a lot for the better.
yeah,
Definitely for the better, I would say.
yeah. But how about AI?
uh, you know, in 19th century, where the machines were introduced in the factories, many people were very unhappy with that because
Yeah.
they just thought, hey, these machines will take our jobs and it will be just awful thing, the worst thing, and that could happen to everyone. But on the other hand, it somehow evolved. It somehow stayed with us, and I guess AI is definitely a good idea. It's a good tool, but you have to remember, and this is something that people sometimes forget. It is just a tool. I mean, uh, we have to learn how to live with that and how to use that. And there are definitely some approaches, some areas where the AI can really help a lot. I mean, have a look. AI, in principle, the way we have now is just a large machine model. Um, it's working really perfectly with the languages. I mean, I feel sorry for people who are living their lives, earning money thanks to translating text from one language to another one. Uh, this is something definitely where AI is winning because it's just whatever you write in one language, it disassemble it to the smallest pieces, to the smallest atoms of the language, and based on that information, it can construct really nice, great, and perfect sentences in another language. So translating one language to another one with help of AI is something absolutely nice, something good, unless you earn money with that, and then there is a huge risk that you will lose your job. On the other hand, there are also some things like areas where the AI is using work of other people, artists, and so on, and is constructing something based on their work. This is bad. This is something we shouldn't use that way, at least. And this is something some people are earning a lot of money with that because um, I had I took a part in one meeting some time ago. The guy was just advertising, "Hey, join my meeting free of charge. I will show you how you can earn a lot of money with AI and so on." Uh, Out of pure interest, I've joined this meeting, and as I've heard what he starts to explain, that he is asking AI, hey, write me a book about this one, or make me a picture in the style of this and this artist so that I can sell it. I've disconnected because this is something I think we should not use AI for. But as I told you, this is just a tool, and we have to learn to live with that. But more important is we have to learn how to use the tool in the right way. I mean, you can use a screwdriver to put the nails in the wall,
Yeah.
just by hammering your screwdriver
Yeah.
into that nails. But on the other hand, you have a better tool for that. And the screwdriver is a great tool for another task.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the same with AI. At the moment, it's a big hype, it's a big bubble, because everyone is just doing AI. AI is everywhere, and AI is for everything. And it's all, wow, AI, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start a new business and you don't have AI in your name, in the name of the business, then there is a huge risk that you will just fail, because everyone is expecting A. If you're not AI, you're just old, and this is just a bad idea.
Yeah.
And this bubble will pop at some point, and I guess at that time we will start to rethink the things, and we will start to learn how to work with that again in the proper way. And of course, there's another risk, because at the moment AI is trained on the data which was produced by humans. But on the other hand, if we fool the internet with the information which is already generated by AI, and if AI in future will start learning on this sometimes hallucinated content generated by AI, it may get worse, because it may turn into some kind of chaos.
Yeah.
So there are some borders which we have to define. There are some limits which we have to apply. And there is a tool, AI, which we need to learn how to use properly. I hope I'm doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
I myself are using AI sometimes to translate the text, sometimes to learn, because at the moment I'm learning Spanish language, and I'm using also AI to train myself, because it's
Yeah.
the language model. So
Yeah.
I guess it's for the languages, for learning languages, for translations, it's the best. Sometimes also to analyze my source code to find the potential bugs or find the issue. I mean, if AI does not understand something, because AI does not really understand, but if it poses some issue, I can look at the code, and maybe it was right, maybe it was not, but at some time it's helping a little bit. So it's definitely a tool.
What current limitation in hardware or software do you think will be solved next?
Jesus Christ. I hate that question, because I would say I have no idea.
Well, exactly.
No, really,
Well,
because for me, I'm working a lot with software writing, right? I'm working to some degree with computers, with hardware, with electronics. But on the other hand, slowly I get the feeling I'm getting old.
yeah.
So not always I can follow all of the stuff that's happening somehow in the background. So I wouldn't say I'm the right person to ask about that. On the other hand, I definitely see a bottleneck in the hardware and in the software. I mean, the hardware has met a performance limit at some point in the past, where it does not make any more sense to increase the CPU speed, because you are slowly getting at physical limits. On the other hand, the hardware is going towards parallelism. I mean, it's not uncommon to have a domestic computer with, I don't know, 24 CPU cores, something that was absolutely strange or unexpected few years ago. And I think this kind of parallelism will evolve in the future even more. I mean, at the moment you have the server machines with 120, 28, 256 CPUs and so on. And I guess at some point, something like that can go into domestic applications. I mean, you have that already in your GPU, in your graphic card. You have the parallel computing to a very huge degree there. And I also guess what could happen in the future and what would be also nice would be a small move from the linear programming of the software to such kind of parallel processing. I mean, not really parallel processing, because we are doing parallel processing of the data at the moment. But some other more sophisticated kind of parallel computing where you start to think about your software not like a algorithm which is processing from A to B, but more like a cloud of processes of the tasks which are running parallel to achieve one goal. I don't know if I have expressed that properly, but for me, it would be something like working on the way FPGAs are working, which are working in principle fully in parallel. You have logic units which just work at the same time. And if something like that would also move in a stronger way to the software, that would be something maybe interesting. I don't know if it's a good idea, if it's something nice or not, or if it makes sense or not. uh, as
Okay.
I've warned you, I'm not the best person to ask about that.
Well, okay. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't hesitate experimenting and always learn.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, sometimes you meet the people who say, okay, I have finished my primary school, I have finished my college, and so on. I'm done with learning. I'm not doing anything more. And I guess this is a huge mistake. I mean, what I'm trying to do now, and maybe I've missed that for some time in my life, is trying to learn all the time. I mean, keep your head busy, keep your brain busy, and don't hesitate trying something new, even if you are not sure. Can I not? Will I manage? Just try. Don't be afraid. The worst thing that can happen is you fail. But even if you fail, you have learned something by that. And I guess this is something very important because this is shaping you, this is improving your skills. Even if you learn to fail, you know how to fail properly without, I don't know, making too much in your head because of the failure. I mean, failure is also experience. This is also
Yes, it is.
something that helps you in the future. So I would say one message to the past: don't hesitate trying and never stop learning.
Good one, good one. Then we are nearing the end. Any shout outs or greetings you'd like to send?
Yes, definitely. Um, in principle, I could have starting to name all the persons, but that would be too long. That would take too much time. I would say I greet everyone I've met in my life, and I greet everyone I've met during my experience or fun with the computers, with programming, with AROS, with MO68. All of the people from the community and of the people from the PiStorm, from the AROS community. I mean, it's always a great feeling. It's always a great experience to work with you, to have feedback from you, and to exchange ideas with you. I mean, there are too many people just to name all of them. I love them all. I love you all. I mean, you guys shaped me. I hope for the good. And yeah, also, so I would say thank you everyone for making me or bringing me to the point where I am, because this is something that really makes me happy, and the place where I am at the moment is also very, very good for me, and I enjoy it a lot.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for taking the time, and good luck with your future projects.
Thank you very much.